The following is a JSW Media Group production. This is the Stylish Vegan Podcast, where we discuss all things food, lifestyle, and culture from a non-judgmental and unapologetic perspective with great people doing great things. I'm your host, Jamika Shamay. Let's get into it. All right, y'all, welcome to another episode of The Stylish Vegan. I am your host, Jamika Shamay, and today I am super excited because we have a guest from across the pond who is joining us, Jeffrey Boadi, who is joining us from London. Am I correct?
London, yeah, that's where I'm based, yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because I was in a clubhouse room one day and you were just dropping such knowledge. And I was like, you know what? I need to have a more in-depth conversation with Jeffrey. And it just organically happened. You know, I was shooting my shot in the DMs. Not the way that y'all are trying to say. I slid into the DMs, but not for nefarious reasons, people. But I just wanted to have a really cool conversation. So please let the people know who you are and what you do.
I'm Jeffrey. I guess I'm a health and wellness advocate from a plant-based standpoint. And I guess my social kind of channels really focus on just showing people how they can optimize a plant-based diet, what kind of recipes they can create, which are, nutritious, nutrient dense, have all the necessary nutrients that you need to thrive on a plant-based diet. And just kind of share my own experience of going plant-based nearly 5 years ago now. So it's August 2017. So yeah, I really just dedicate my platforms to just providing that information, sharing my experiences, and really kind of almost creating a community of people who want to find out more about how to kind of thrive on a plant-based diet and kind of, adopt other kind of health and wellness tips for optimal living.
Wonderful. Always good when people are out there trying to help the masses and get the word out.
You've got to get the word out,
Let's delve into why you became vegan. Like, what prompted your plant-based journey back in 2017?
So it's a really interesting story because I'd say before that I was very much, I've grown up with an athletic background, played a lot of sport in school, played like lower level professional football or soccer as you guys call it over there. So my understanding of nutrition was very limited to meat equals protein, milk is calcium, and I need as much meat and milk as I get because I need to be strong. And then I came across, and I was a very, very heavy meat eater, a lot of animal products. So multiple eggs for breakfast, lean chicken breast for lunch or fish, and the same for dinner essentially. And I remember my sister mentioned to me that there was a documentary that she thought I would find quite interesting about the links between diet and disease. So I watched it at the time, this was 2017, and I watched it with my late wife. Unfortunately, she's not with us anymore, God rest her soul. And we kind of just watched it and it kind of completely shifted my perspective on nutrition. And I do caveat this by saying that nutrition documentaries can be quite biased and they do have certain holes in them. I'm not, oblivious to that. They are biased. They can have certain outlandish comments that they do make in them, which it's important to have that discernment to see what you can take as valuable and what you can kind of dismiss as hyperbole. But for me, it sent me down a rabbit hole of, diving into the scientific research, reading books, watching videos, coming across certain doctors and experts in the plant-based nutrition space, but also kind of doing it. I completely cut animal products out overnight. It was a case of, right, I'm going to just stop eating animal products now and just see how it goes. And it was a real process of understanding, how to properly formulate a plant-based meal, where am I going to get the nutrients that I'm now losing from meat. And I also wanted to continue to optimize it for health, performance, and training because I still, wanted to be strong in the gym, to be able to run and be, mobile, flexible, and just have that overall, strength, health, and wellness that I've always wanted to maintain going into, my 30s and beyond. And it was really just, I then just kind of started really finding out about, loads of different foods that I wasn't eating before, really finding out the importance of getting loads of diversity, the key nutrients that I need to look out for. And I just then started just sharing that experience on my Instagram account, just sharing like I was creating these infographics with, things like, where'd you get your plant-based iron from, omega-3s and things like that. And then just started sharing recipes and getting more comfortable in the kitchen. And then it just started to grow in terms of the community of people wanting to, find out more about plant-based nutrition. And even if it's not necessarily a case of people wanting to go fully vegan, just giving them a platform that, okay, I'm vegan. These are the kind of foods that I'm eating, and maybe I can give you some inspiration to get more plants into your diet. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on now, and just continuing that going forward.
What would you say has been the most difficult or challenging part of your transition? Is it, have you had pushback or from people, from family? Like how has that part of the journey been?
To be honest, I think at the start, I mean, my mum at the time, she couldn't really understand it. She was just like, "Why, not eating meat?" Of course, I've grown up in a Ghanaian household where meat is just the norm. Every meal, meat, eggs, fish, everything. So to cut that out was probably quite strange for her. But then she kind of started to. Obviously, I was living at home at the time, and then she started to, understand. Okay, he's doing this seriously. So, and I was kind of making a lot of my own food anyway. But if she did cook, she would make me certain stews that didn't have meat, but would maybe have beans or chickpeas or lentils. But I wouldn't say it was really much of an obstacle, to be honest, because I'm someone who, there was never really any danger of me not doing it based on any outside influences. I would say one of the challenges that I did encounter on the journey of it was, and it's something that I always try to hammer to people. Like, if you're going to go plant based and you're going to remove meat from your plate, you have to increase your food volume, because plant based food is naturally less calorie dense than meat, for example. So if you have similar sized portions with no meat, you're going to be naturally eating less calories. And naturally eating less calories will mean unwanted weight loss. So I think in the first like 3 or 4 weeks, even though I was feeling amazing in so many areas, I did unintentionally lose 1 or 2 kilograms. And then I kind of just did a bit more reading, did a bit more research, and realized that I've actually just got to increase the amount of food that I'm eating. So it was a relatively quick fix. And then I was able to get back on track pretty quickly after that.
That's a really good point because I think a lot of people get that that's one of the misconceptions, right? That like
Yeah.
you're going to lose all this weight and you're going to be sick and you're going to look sickly and all of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I never had that problem. I have been on the thick side for the whole time, but I think it's because of my love of pasta and all carbs and potatoes, because pasta is a love language, but this isn't about me. This
I
is
love that.
not about me. We are going to talk about you.
Yeah.
How has it been? I mean, have a lot of because you mentioned your background as an athlete.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that interests a lot of people when they're trying to go plant-based. There's been like this movement, especially over here in the US, where a lot of athletes, particularly football players and some basketball players on the national level, have
Mm.
adopted more of a plant-based lifestyle now.
Yeah.
So people are looking at it less as something that's weird. And
Yeah. No,
now
exactly.
it's becoming, I won't say it's mainstream because we are still very far from there.
Still very
But
free. Yeah.
it's trendy right now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what would you say to someone, and you've given some of this advice already in the
Mm.
conversation, but if you are athletic and you're worried about, losing that muscle mass
Yeah.
or not getting enough, the infamous, I'm not getting enough protein.
Yeah.
We never get enough protein.
Yeah.
Like, where do you get your protein from? Which I
Yeah.
think is a ludicrous conversation if you study it all. But, just talk about athletes and athletic performance and a plant-based or vegan diet.
So I think, look, the key is that people, often ask the question, "Oh, am I getting enough protein? How much protein do you need?" A lot of the time, if you ask these people, "Okay, how much protein do you actually need?" they may not actually have the answer. There have been studies that have shown that anything between 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein is more than sufficient for, lean muscle growth, muscle protein synthesis, recovery after training. So, for example, in my case, I'm around 90 kilograms. I think that's 200 pounds. So I would be looking at, if I use that model of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, I'll be looking at something along the lines of maybe nearly around 145, 150 grams of protein, which is very, very easy to get. I can even just run through a day of eating where it kind of shows how easy it is to get. So typically in the morning, I'd have oatmeal where I put a plant-based protein powder in there, like a scoop and a half, which would be maybe 35, 40 grams, a couple of tablespoons of hemp seeds, which is another 10 grams of protein. That's 50 grams. A little bit of almond butter, maybe some pumpkin seeds. So that's easily 55, 60 grams of protein in just one meal. Very, very easy. And then for lunchtime, I might have like a Buddha bowl of some sort where I'd maybe have some quinoa, tempeh, maybe have some avocado, some dark leafy greens, maybe some black beans or kidney beans or something like that. And that's, again, easily another 45 to 50 grams of protein. So we're up until like 100 grams of protein already. Anyway, and as an athlete, I'm sure many people have either like another protein shake or maybe like a protein bar, or I sometimes make these little protein bites from protein powder, oatmeal, dates, and they're just really easy, like 7 or 8 grams per bite. And then again, for dinner, I could make like a chickpea curry with like a legume pasta, so like a black bean pasta or a lentil pasta, which are really, really high in protein. So you can easily get, from a black bean pasta, you can get 45 grams per 100 grams serving. So again, you're well into the mid hundreds there. So really, really easy. It's just about knowing the foods to get them from and the amounts to eat them in, and you're going to be absolutely fine. Like I've seen no I've seen no kind of issues with strength gains, recovery, training and maximizing that, as I still do. And again, it's a really easy process to get the necessary protein to maximize muscle synthesis, and to maximize that muscle recovery.
So basically, you're not wasting away. You're
No,
not,
yeah, I'm not wasting away because I'm eating a good amount of calories. I eat a lot anyway because I train, so my calorie intake might be higher than the average person. But even for the average person, you don't even need 1.6. You probably just need, maybe, I think the RDA for protein is something like 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. I think that personally should be a little bit higher, even if you're not a trained athlete, just in terms of preventing muscle wastage, bone density, sarcopenia as you age as well, which is the wasting away of muscle. So yeah, it's really, really straightforward. You've got the lentils, tofu, tempeh, all types of beans. You've got chickpeas, you've got edamame, you've got seitan if you wanted to do that, hemp seeds, like it's endless amounts. And I think it's just about education. That's really the key. I remember someone mentioned to me going vegan. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years before I actually did it. And because I didn't have the knowledge or the understanding, I was like, there's no way I could do that. Where am I going to get my protein? Because it was like meat equals protein. That was just like drilled into my head. Then you get an understanding and an awareness of there's protein and so many different plant foods. The highest ones, as I mentioned, you're going to get tempeh, tofu, seitan, legume pastas, really, really high in protein. And then the ones that are maybe a little bit less, chickpeas, beans, those kind of things, hemp seeds, of course. So yeah, it's really, really easy. And it's just about providing that information, and which is why I enjoy doing what I do, because it helps to almost like bust a lot of the myths that are out there in terms of protein.
What's the craziest question you think you've gotten when people are trying to transition, or just in general, just
Yeah.
about, like what have you heard? Because I know you have to hear some interesting stuff.
That's a good question. The most interesting thing I've heard, I think it probably would center around the protein one. I think there's been so many conversations that I've had with people. I can't actually remember like specifically off the top of my head some of the worst ones, but it always tends to be around the protein, like plant protein isn't digestible and things like that. And you can't, it's not anabolic in terms of helping you build muscle. But I'm like, okay, but again, I think the key thing is as well is that I think people seem to think that just eating animal protein your muscle will just grow.
Just
Yeah,
automatically, right?
exactly. The main key is the resistance training. You have to resistance train, and as long as you have quality fuel to fuel your weight training sessions, and by that I mean good quality complex carbohydrates in the form of like oatmeal, sweet potato, pasta, those kind of foods. That's going to give you so much fuel to get the glycogen into your muscles, so you can actually maximize your efforts in the gym, because it's the efforts in the gym that are going to help to create that scenario where you can then get a quality protein in there. And whether or not it's animal or plant protein, the differences are very marginal. I mean, there's so many athletes out there who are plant-based, who are thriving, who don't look like they're wasting away. So, the proof's in the pudding. It's just a case of people becoming receptive to it.
And I do appreciate that from what I've noticed just from your Instagram and your socials and your website, when you educate people, you do it in a very non-judgmental way, which I think is key to understanding and bringing people in. How do you feel about the approach? There's a lot of vegans out there they're passionate, and you should be,
Yeah,
right? Because it is about a compassionate lifestyle, and you
yeah,
want people to do better. Like,
yeah.
you can't help it. But tell me a little bit about why you do things the way that you do. What's different about your approach and why?
So I think if I was to be approached by someone who was screaming and shouting about, the horrors of animal agriculture and telling me that I was a murderer and telling me that you need to go vegan, it's just a natural human instinct to, even if what the person is saying is right, your natural human instinct is just to get defensive and to not be open to that. Like the amount of people who've sent me DMs saying, talking about plant protein or talking about, oh, you need to avoid this and that. And then I'll just start having a conversation with them, not from a place of, oh, I know more than you or this and that. Because in most cases, a lot of us are on the same page anyway. It's just about getting the information across in a way that people are actually going to be receptive to. So I find no value in telling someone, you need to go vegan, you need to do this, meat causes X, Y, Z, because people are going to tune out to that. So what people need to feel is that, right, this guy is meeting me where I'm at, first of all, because that's what you have to do. You have to meet people where they're already at. You can't push them into a direction where they're not comfortable and they've never been, because they don't want to go there. It's just natural human nature. You have to meet people where they're at. And I find a lot more value in having conversations with people and opening up to everyone and not being like very dogmatic. Of course, if you look at from an ethical standpoint, of course, it's horrible what they do to animals in these factory farms. And I think most people would be open to understanding that in the first place. It's just a case of maybe misguided ignorance, or maybe they're not ready to receive that information. And if they're not ready to receive that information, I can't make them. They have to be ready for it.
Right.
And then from a health standpoint, I'm of the understanding that yes, a well-planned vegan whole food diet is a very, very good way to eat. But that doesn't mean that it's the best diet for everyone, because every single person is unique. You have to find the diet that's best for you. There are some people who are going to maybe thrive on 90% plants with a small amount of animal products. We don't have the evidence to show that one diet is absolutely better than the other, because everybody is different in their biological makeup. So it's understanding that and accepting that. And the amount of people that I've conversated with in the community on both Instagram and Twitter who, my approach seems to be working with them in terms of they're seeing what I'm doing. They're seeing that I'm quite calm and I'm not quite, I'm not aggressive as certain vegans are, which I can understand to a degree. But that allows them to, be more receptive to what I'm saying and then take certain things on board, and then ultimately start to thrive in their own way. So I just think, going down that road is just the best way to be.
Yeah, I think that it can definitely be useful. I remember being in college and the folks who were with PETA were on me. And
Uh,
this is before they realized that I was a lifelong vegan. So I'm just like, if I am getting this kind of treatment and you don't even know my background, how are other people,
yeah.
feeling when you approach them in such an aggressive way? And I get it, different approaches for different people. And yes, you can be definitely passionate about it. It's interesting that you said the part about like how diets are different for different people and how it can. So just be ready. They're going to come after you for that.
Well, I mean, look, but that's just the reality. Like,
Yep.
If people who can't understand that and can't accept that, that's where the dogmas set in. That's where they maybe have tied their diet to their identity. So they feel that if someone is, speaking in a way that is going against the vegan diet in any kind of way, they feel a personal attack on them. Like I'm vegan, so by the sense of not just what I eat, but wherever it's practical and possible, I avoid leather belts, leather bags. I always try and go for vegan leather wherever I can. That's my choice. But I can also accept and detach the emotional and ethical side away from the nutritional science. I don't let them get blurred. I can accept that, a lot of the science that's out there shows that a diet of more plants is more beneficial. Does that mean all plants is better than 95% plants? How do we know? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? There are so many people who are healthy, who have great bloods, who, are thriving, who eat meat, who eat animal products. So does that mean animal products are inherently unhealthy? Or is it a case of we need to look into the nuance? And I think that's something that, a lot of the vegan community maybe, or certain sections of the vegan community maybe don't look too deeper into. So the nuance of a scientific paper where, it's like a dose dependent response, for example. So, people say meat causes cancer explicitly, or does it? Because that means if someone just ate a piece of meat, wouldn't they just get cancer? That's almost the logic that they
Right.
have. But are we looking at if someone's eating really ultra processed meats and red meats and not exercising and smoking and not trained and all these kind of things, all these other lifestyle issues, then there might be an increased chance of them developing something like bowel cancer, for example. But we can't just say meat causes cancer. There's evidence that increased amounts increases your risk, but that's where the nuance lies. And we can't just be like X causes Y. We have to have a wider conversation around it.
I agree. I agree. I love that you brought that up and brought up the nuances because that kind of leads me to the next part of the conversation. I want to talk about culture a
Yeah,
little bit because there's a misnomer, particularly over here in the US, that veganism is a quote unquote white thing.
yeah,
Right, and that, it's a foreign concept to people of color, particularly Black people, and I'm just like, "How is that possible?" Like, especially when you look at indigenous cultures and where or how people actually did their food. There's a lot of cultures, people of color, who the majority of their diet is plant-based,
yeah.
and or at least traditionally has been until other things were introduced. So, talk a little bit about that. Like, is it different in the UK? Like, how is that perception? Like, have you encountered that at all? Or what do you see has been the difference if you're talking to, Black Americans who are vegan as opposed to, just
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit. I'm interested.
So I think it's similar in the sense that people believe that black people are just we're supposed to eat meat, right? And I think from a lot of the research that I've done, looking at how when capitalism came, no, sorry, colonialism came into African countries, and then these farming practices, which were very lucrative, came in. That was when the meat consumption really increased, like massively. So if you look at like there's I can't remember what the organization is, but they have a pyramid and it's called the African Heritage Diet. And it just shows the foods that were actually majority, the majority of foods that were eaten in black culture. So you've got like a lot of legumes, tubers, beans. So, foods like yam. For example, if I look at the way that I ate in my household as a Ghanaian, there was yam, there was potatoes, there was greens, there was black-eyed beans. If you look at like an Ethiopian Ethiopian vegan cuisine, for example, you've got teff, you've got you've got injera, sorry, made from teff flour. You've got loads of different lentils, chickpeas, other legumes. You look at the Ital Rastafarian way of eating. It's plant based. It's wanting to put foods that are going to give life force to the body. So there's definitely a misconception, I think, that we believe that we're just supposed to eat meat. And this is not to say that meat was not consumed at all, but nowhere to the degree that it's consumed in today's day and age in black communities. I'm sure you've seen there's a couple of documentaries in the US, or that were made in the US, that speak on these things. There's one called The Invisible Vegan, and another one called Soul Food Junkies, which are two really good documentaries that I guess anyone who's black, I mean anyone in general, but particularly if you're black and you want to know more about plant-based nutrition and vegan food, those are two really good documentaries to watch. And I think if you think about why people think that veganism is a white thing, it's because it's always been painted as like, blonde girls, drinking green juices, doing yoga and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously not really in alignment with black culture. But if you look at the foods that were historically eaten, then it paints a different picture.
I mean, it's what you said earlier. It's about education.
Yeah,
It's about exposure
yeah,
and also meeting people where they are.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you can't preach to folks about, a plant-based diet and saying you're just gonna have to eat celery and that's it. Like you
Yeah,
have or you like a whole bunch of unseasoned food. Like it's just not gonna work. Like you said, it's
no.
a cultural thing.
Of course not. But what's so good is that there are so many people now who on Instagram who are showing you how you can make fully plant-based meals with the African and Caribbean culture infused into it. You're not going to lose anything. You can have so many different meals of plantain, kidney bean curries, chickpea curries, yam. Like there are so many people on Instagram like RG Vegan Food. You've got Vegan Nigerian. There's so many people out there showing you the kind of foods that you can make that aren't going to deviate you away from the foods that you've historically been accustomed to growing up. So it's all about tapping into those guys, and as you say, getting that education and seeing the kind of foods that you can eat without having to compromise on what you really like.
Let's talk a little bit about because what I think is interesting, and the reason why I started this podcast is because people have such a narrow view of vegans and those who are plant based. It's they think all we do is sit around and talk about food and
Yeah,
and try to get people to stop wearing leather. Like that's our
yeah,
whole life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So talk about a little bit about what you like, what you do, your likes, your dislikes, your hobbies, those types of things. I want to show people that you're a full person,
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, again, I love to train in the gym, like training in the gym, lifting heavy weights. That's something that I've always loved doing. I love to play sport. As I said, I grew up playing football, soccer, as you guys call it. So I traveled to America, Norway, Austria to play with different clubs and things like that. Tennis player as well. Like I love to read books. I'm big into self development, so I read a lot of self development books. One of my favorite books that I always speak about, and I probably will never stop speaking about, is The Power of Now. That really showed me how to just stay grounded in the present moment and not think too much about the past and the future, and really just elevate your consciousness in and kind of accepting what's in the now, essentially. But I think it's not, obviously I love my food and I enjoy showing people how you can make really tasty, nutritionally dense plant-based meals, but I like other areas of health and wellness as well. So stress management, sleep's a really big one. Knowing how you can optimize sleep, that's something that I've looked to always do for in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So I think that, I mean, the vegan label definitely has a lot of like negative connotations to it. As you said, people think that it's just people going around to slaughterhouses and screaming to people to stop wearing leather and going vegan. But for me, I don't see it as like, is it a part of will I kind of attach my identity to it? No. Obviously, I'm someone who definitely does care about their health. But I think it's important to get views from outside of veganism or whatever. So, for example, on Twitter, I have a lot of conversation with people who may not necessarily be vegan, but I can learn different things about them, about key supplements, magnesium, and the benefits that they have for the body. And then I can take that and implement that into my own life. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely like to think I'm a rounded person. I'm not someone who's just like attaches their entire identity to the fact that I only eat plant foods. So, yeah, I hope that's me in a nutshell, really.
Good, good. And I guess I always like to ask this question. How did the pandemic change you? Or did it? How did 2020, that pivotal year for all of us,
Yeah.
how did it affect you?
To be honest, what was quite interesting about it was that I was at the time, obviously, a lot of people, were losing their jobs and having to be let go from certain jobs. I was one of them because I'm typically a contractor in the digital content space, but the organization that I was working with had to let people go, so they let me go. But I think for me, I'm quite straight laced. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get too crazy about it. This has happened. Cool, let's see what we can do. But it allowed me a chance to continue actually. I was able to build my website. I was able to kind of restructure my website, work on a lot of the personal branding stuff that I've been doing in and around the health and wellness space from a plant-based lens, start creating certain recipes and certainly just have like a bit of time off and time to just kind of decompress and relax and things like that. So of course, whilst it was very, very difficult for so many people, I found a lot of, value in many ways in 2020 in terms of like slowing down, trusting in the process of, I always knew that I was going to be okay in terms of like work and being able to continue to grow my passion. And fortunately, in that time, I think I was able to really lay the foundations for a lot of the things that I'm doing now, where I'm able to, I've got loads of opportunities coming up through, through my passion essentially, which I was able to really find some grounding in it at that time. So, see, I felt 2020 was obviously an interesting time for everyone, but I definitely felt that there was some value to be gleaned from it, and I was definitely able to do that.
That's good. That's good. I always tell people my running joke, not joke, but statement is that God basically was like, I'm gonna need all of y'all to sit your ass down for a little bit
Yeah,
and reconnect and get it
exactly.
together.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. Like
So
I was able to go to the park and do some training with my gymnastic ring, and I wouldn't have usually done that. And seeing all like, there was a lot of people just out at parks, just kind of it almost just seemed like things had slowed down a lot. And particularly in a city like London, where everything is just so fast paced, everyone's got somewhere to go. It just forced people to just like, right, we've now got to slow down a little bit. We can move forward in life and maybe explore other things that we can find value in. So yeah, for me, I saw some benefits to that period. Of course, in terms of people struggling in terms of illness and what was going on, that wasn't great, but I still think there was value to be found. And what I did notice as well is that people were taking more of an interest in their health. So
yeah.
I saw a huge amount of people in like public parks working out. I'd never seen that before. And that was, for me, that was really good. And whether or not it's continued, but at that moment, people were finding like a bit more of a connection with okay, there's this certain thing that's going around which is affecting the health of certain people. How can I optimize my own health? How can I take certain elements of my own health into my own hands? Going out to do a training session in the park in the sun, that's always a great way to start. Being out, going for walks, moving the body, stress reducing in many ways. So yeah, I think there was some benefits definitely in that period of time.
I definitely agree. That's my sentiment as well. I think it was a time for us all to, I mean, if you were afforded the opportunity to like
And
take
yeah,
stock
of
and
course.
just, slow down, see what's really important,
Yeah,
and kind of go from there.
exactly.
Before we finish, I just want to ask, what do you have coming up? What's next for Jeffrey?
What is next? So, I mean, I've got a couple of really cool campaigns that I'm doing with health focused organizations. So you'll probably see those in due course. I do have some ideas about things that I want to develop, whether it's obviously I've got my ebook, which I had on my website from last year. I would love to create a physical recipe book at some point. I do like the idea of that. Haven't set anything in stone as of yet. But for the moment, I'm just kind of moving forward with life. I think, there's been a lot of things that have happened in my personal life at the end of last year that, still kind of, continuing to build the foundations of in terms of a new life. So yeah, there's been a lot that's gone on, but I'm still, definitely very excited about the future. And I think my aim is to just continue to reach as many people as possible, encourage people to continue to take control of their own health, and just show them if you want to go plant-based, you're going to reduce the amount of meat that's on your plate. Here are some good ways to do it. Here's some information that might help you. And here are some recipes that can get you started in terms of being able to build a base of eating in a different way.
Okay. What's something that you would like people to know about you that's not readily visible or available by just looking at your social media or reading your website? What's a fun fact?
Fun fact about me. So I went to a private school which had a really, really strange uniform. I've seen a few people mocking it on Twitter, and it was pretty crazy, actually, to be fair. And I don't know if you remember the lead singer of a band called Kiss. I believe his name was Gene Simmons.
Yes.
Yeah, so they did a show at my school. I think it was called Rock School, where he was like I think he was trying to almost like get a few kids from the school to create like a rock band or create some kind of musical like a group or whatever. It was quite interesting. I wasn't a part of it, but that was my school, and it was a very interesting school to be a part of.
I love it. I love it. Is there anything else you would like everyone to know, or please tell us your website, let people know how they can get a hold of you on social, tell us all the things, Jeffrey, all
All
the
the
things.
things. Yeah, so my website is www.thewealthofhealth.co.uk. And that's where I kind of put more long form pieces about plant-based nutrition. So you can find articles about like iron, for example, and ways in which you can smoothly transition to a plant-based diet. I also have my ebook there, my Eat More Plants ebook, which was released last year. So that's 7 recipes for 7 nights of the week, plus a bonus recipe. You can also sign up to my email newsletter there as well. I send out newsletters bi-weekly with just some more tips and tricks with regards to health, wellness, recipes, plant-based nutrition, etc., etc. In terms of my Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at Jeffrey Boadi. On Twitter, it's the same username but with an underscore at the end. So yeah, you'll just find me talking about health, talking about wellness, and just trying to give the people some information that can inspire them going forward.
Okay. And anyone who knows me knows that I am notorious for inviting myself over to dinner. So, if I make it to London, what are we having for dinner? I
What
need
are we
to know
having for
this in
dinner?
advance.
Okay, we've got a few options. We can make like a nice chipotle Buddha bowl with maybe some organic tofu. We can get some fresh fruit and vegetables in there, maybe a whole grain like a buckwheat or a quinoa, or we can maybe do like a lentil bolognese. That's one of my staples. Very, very easy to make. Make it like a nice whole grain pasta. Make a lentil bolognese with green beluga lentils. We can get some celery in there, some carrots, maybe some cherry tomatoes, or a nice chickpea curry with some chickpeas, some spinach in there. Yeah, plenty of options. So yeah, whenever you're ready.
All right, I am booking the flight very soon. I'll let you
Love
know.
that.
But thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure. I enjoy it when people want to share knowledge and, share their personality. So I appreciate you. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we give some people some value. whether it's to, start tweaking their lifestyle a little bit in terms of the foods that they eat or getting an understanding of plant-based nutrition and veganism. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. So yeah, really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. If you want to reach Jeffrey yourself, do what I did and slide into those DMs. He will respond. So, thanks again. You are listening to The Stylish Vegan, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Stylish Vegan Podcast. If you like what you heard today, we'd love your support. You can share, subscribe, and like us on all social media at stylish_vegan. Want to sponsor or be a guest? Go ahead and slide into our DMs on Instagram. Until next time.